the coordinator from Scientists for Future Upper Austria, the regional group in Upper Austria, and I'm since this year General Secretary of the club from Austrian Chapter and still lecturer for this course actually at the JKU in Linz. And Helvin, could you prepare the slides? Go to the slides. Thank you very much. So I hope soon you will see the slides, and you will see it anyway. The most important question for me nowadays is really how do you want to live? And I hope I can give you a small overview about these points of sustainability, how we can describe boundaries and maybe measure our footprints. So, and therefore I have some questions prepared for you. So I said before, please prepare your menti meter, and therefore you can go to the slides, menti.com, and use the code. And just give me some keywords about what do you know about greenhouse effect. So maybe the basics, some words. Because I'm physicist usually, and 10 years ago, or for 10 years, and therefore I like the details of the physics behind. And I hope it works. Is somebody typing something? Okay, silence. Well, most important are the greenhouse gases, right? Do you know some? Does somebody use it? Okay. Surprise, surprise. Does not work. I'm done. Ah, it doesn't show here. Thank you much. Right. Ozone, artificial. The sun, carbon emissions, global warming. Cows farting, really nice, really nice. I like it. Heats the atmosphere, right? Climate change, yes. Artificial, yes and no. This is maybe one of the most important parts. And thank you very much for your introduction. So, as I said, I have some German slides. And so there's usually one, we can divide two different greenhouse effects. So in principle, there's the natural one, which is really important because otherwise we would have just minus 18 degrees in general on the globe. And with the greenhouse gases, we are at the moment at roughly 15 degrees Celsius. And the important part is here that the sunlight is coming through the atmosphere, the light is coming through the atmosphere, is heating the Earth, and with heat radiation going up from the Earth to the atmosphere. And this atmosphere is, some people call it reflecting, but we will see how it works on the next slide, because it's not really reflecting, it's a more, let's say, physical process. Because most of you maybe wondered why the greenhouse gases are really the greenhouse gases, because most of the atmosphere is done from oxygen and nitrogen, but one of the bad guys or good guys, we can think about it, is this CO2, and this has kind of dipole moment. You don't have to know what a dipole moment is, and at least, but the most important part is interacting with the infrared light. CO2 is interacting with the infrared light, oxygen and nitrogen not, and therefore it's active and doing actually greenhouse effect. So what I did forget, okay, practically carbon dioxide and methane are really active with infrared light, and what you have to know usually as well, so in principle it takes the energy of the infrared light in by some vibrations. It's like sketched here, so it vibrates, and then it emits those energy again 100 degree around, or 360 degree around all the molecule, and 50% goes back to the Earth. And this is more or less the, let's say, reflecting part. And therefore, it comes back to the Earth, and this is practically the greenhouse effect. So, as I said, it's not two different, but at least two components. There's practically the natural greenhouse effect, which comes practically from the flowers and trees and plants and the ocean. So in principle, there's the exchange of carbon dioxide and water vapor to the atmosphere. But since 100 or more years, we are really using a lot of carbon dioxide from the Earth, from the fossil fuels. And this we add also to the atmosphere, and this is the major problem. So if we could actually stay in the natural cycle in some way, we would have not so many problems, I would say. So this actually the last 2 years showed us very well how exponential growth is working, and also our CO2 emission in the atmosphere, the concentration in the atmosphere is also going exponentially. So it goes practically from 280 at some point to now we are even more than 400. So it's really some exponential growth. And our, let's say, economic growth is also seeing in a lot of different numbers. So I hope the Wi-Fi works here. So a lot of different numbers for example, again, the CO2 concentration or oceanic ecosystem, the fisheries, which are really extinction, or at least some global biodiversity, we see exponential growth. We see great floods, the number of great floods is really increasing. So a lot of numbers really showing also the effect of climate change and the impact of our life and working on the ecosystem. So, takes some time to change, okay? So let's say in this year, 2022, we are celebrating, or I would not celebrating because it's not a really good time, but there's this book, was 50 years ago, this book from Dennis Meadows from the Club of Rome, so therefore I also got to know the Club of Rome, which actually stated the limits of growth in economic growth already 50 years ago. So the bad impact of this continuous economic growth to our ecosystem and to our society. You can watch a small movie over there for, if you will get the slides and then maybe watch the movie. It's a nice overview about the book, which was published 50 years ago. And there's this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC reports, which are reported already some years, or over the last years. They present the reports from the climate scientists and state actually the facts that this man-made climate change is due to increased greenhouse gas emission. That's more or less a fact. We see it in more extreme weather events, and actually we have really this increase of global average temperature. And actually we said in 2015 already that we want to stay at in 1.5 degree or well below 2 degree. I think most of you know it already. So what do we need to reduce in at least the greenhouse gases? And there the numbers vary a little bit because the model is not really exact, not really precise. There's always some variation if you do a modeling and a prediction of the future, if you try it. But we at least have some gigatons left in order to reach this 1.5 degree goal. This means much less CO2 per capita for all of us. So actually, they say 1 ton of CO2, sometimes you read 2 or 2.5. Actually, it's much less than we have at the moment, because at the moment we are at roughly have this 9 tons of CO2 per capita in Austria, and actually also import some of CO2 if you import and buy something from China or South America. So we actually import also the CO2, which is there produced but is not counted for Austria. So if you, maybe to get a nice figure of the CO2, because I know it's really, or I like measuring stuff because I'm a physicist. And I like this kind of correspondences if you try to imagine what means 1 ton of CO2. And this means actually roughly 2,000 cubic meters of pure CO2 gas. So actually half of this balloon full would be 1 ton of CO2. Or if you put it into the air, so it's really, you know, already it's 0.04% of atmosphere is, or of the air is CO2. Actually, it's 5 million cubic meters air, so 1,250 hot air balloons. Actually, roughly 435 liters of gasoline, or 3,600 kilometers by car, so roughly from Linz to Spain and back. And as I mentioned, we only have this 1 ton actually in the future, hopefully. Otherwise, we will have a problem with that 1.5 degree. Or we go in a medium-sized car 10 kilometers a day over 1 year. So this is all comparable to 1 ton of CO2. And another point is this typical plastic bag, which is always strongly discussed. So we have, for example, a plastic bag, or a paper bag, or some bread, or this meat. And I would like to guess what is the difference, actually, the ratio between this CO2, so from the meat, and from the plastic bag, roughly. So have a look to Menti and give me some numbers. What do you think? What is the ratio? How much larger? I can say that the meat is larger, yeah, you know. The meat is larger, has a larger carbon footprint than the plastic bag, but how much larger? What do you guess? $100, we have 100. First guess. 20, nice. But not closer. 4, 52, sorry, 55. Well, I'm sorry. It's actually 250. Yeah, so the question is a little bit why we discuss so much about plastic bags and not about the meat, because at least we have a bigger impact with meat than with the plastic bag. If you look at on the carbon footprint, if you look on the ecosystem, then it's again a different story, but I will come to this different kind of viewpoints. But at least I don't want to blame something. I don't want to blame the meat. It's correct to discuss the plastic bags and so on. But at least be aware that the numbers can be very different and not like you might think. That's the one message. It's sometimes more complicated than you think, and more often we need the numbers as well. So the good news about this whole story, if the slide is coming, yes. There are still studies which say and claim we can reach 1.5 degrees Celsius in the global warming if we act now, or at least really fast, with a lot of different measures, and you know a lot of them, I guess, already they're discussed in media. But, but also the solutions to this climate crisis, so for example, the circular economy, the CO2 taxes. I always want to emphasize the social aspect of the CO2 taxes because this is also most important. We will see also later why. Those solutions actually can help also in the solution to other more complex problems, because it's not about just climate, but also about, and not about greenhouse gases, but a lot of other crises as well. So one question would be now, do you know the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals already? So maybe I see some faces are shaking head, just that you get eye impression that you know it. Well, okay, that's already okay, roughly half. But then I tell something new at least to some people. So thank you very much. There is actually 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are defined in 2015. And each of them has some different smaller targets because they are really roughly, or at least really big topics as well, each of them. And in total, there are 169 targets behind those 17 goals. But actually, to order them and to get a bigger overview, there are 17, which is mainly some, let's say, some social aspects over here. Then industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, responsible consumption and production, which is, for example, also covered by circular economy. Clean water is really important for many people. So it's actually for worldwide. Yeah. So every people or all people will be affected by climate change and all the problems we have. And those goals are aiming for, let's say, better world, also in the sense of climate crisis, but also in a kind of inequality and well-being. So, and one important part I was also say, peace is one fundamental point of this all goals, because otherwise we cannot do anything. I don't want to mention about the war at the moment, how much CO2, I don't want to calculate. A friend of mine was asked, so can you guess how much CO2 would be or carbon emission would be there? He didn't want to start, just think about the houses and rebuilding, and it's really complicated. So before we can do anything, we need also peace, and this is really important. So the nice, interesting part is also that there is already a lot of stuff done about this Sustainable Development Goals, because there is, since 3 years, there's a project running in Austria called Uninetz, which is actually working on getting options for Austria based on the Sustainable Development Goals for all of them, 17. Over the last 3 years, 19 institutions were part of this project. And actually it was presented this March to the Austrian federal government with all the options. It's more than 1,000 pages. And nice part is also that 4 of the SDG projects were led by researchers at Johannes Kepler University, so here actually. And I guess not many people of you have heard about it. So that's also part of problem with communication. And so actually there's a lot of done in sense of this Sustainable Development Goals already. And what I think is really how we can measure this progress in going to climate neutral and defining all the kind of problems we have, and about thinking about these materials. Because I said before, 1 kilogram CO2 we have already, only this one maybe for in the future. And I like the idea of the spaceship Earth. Yeah. So Earth is really sometimes really big, and you think about it as infinite and really huge. But if you think about a smaller spaceship, I really try to make a picture here with the Earth and some spaceship. But you have to think about, if you go to a trip to Mars, how much you carry, what will you need, and actually you will use your materials very wisely and not throw them away and not throw them out of the spaceship if you don't need them, and don't waste air or water or something. And I guess we need also the same mindset, as we have finite resources and we are on a spaceship and we have a long travel to Mars, in mind of using our materials and resources on Earth. So there's already also some studies about what are the actual boundaries we consider for Earth. And there are actually 9 based on this study, right, from Steffen in 2015, and also some from person in 2022. Actually, there climate change is only one part. And we talk about, for example, ocean acidification. We talk about biochemical flows, phosphorus and I think nitrogen, sorry. Freshwater use, land system change. Actually, nine really important points, which are not only climate change, but a lot more. And the red part is actually, it's more or less critical or overused already, or in a really critical level. So actually, this is the biosphere integrity, diversity problems. So those are really critical, and also the phosphorus and nitrogen flows are really critical. And at least the climate change is, well, it's not critical, but really in a bad shape, I would say. So, and based on these nine boundaries, I think it's some kind of the outer space we can live in. Yeah. So this is, and there's a model which ends up as a donut. I like the idea. I like donuts as well. But let's say we have this 9 boundaries outside of this donut, and this is actually the space we live in. Yeah, so this is the boundary we can grow, more or less. We can collect those also if we try to get some systematic approach to the Sustainable Development Goals. These 4: clean water, life below water, climate action, and life on land. So actually, this is the framework we can handle. The Earth gives us some resources, and we might use them or lend them and use them in a circular economy, and just use them continuously and not maybe waste them, hopefully. So the question is, what is inside? And this would be, let's say, the social. So I will call today social boundaries, because there's a lot of stuff we would like to need. So, for example, we need food, we need water. Many people just need food and water because they don't have really those basic social needs. Networks, housing, all this kind of social stuff we would like to have in order to live is also covered by the SDGs. Yeah, so we have this zero hunger, no poverty, sustainable cities and communities. Maybe Linz will also be at one point a sustainable city because they are trying to get one in this European network. Again, peace, which is really important, reduce inequality. So all these kind of social features actually are inside of the donut. And if we put it together, we get a nice space of living inside the donut. So actually, this is the area where we have a nice life, but stay inside our boundaries given by the Earth. And this is actually the answer where I want to live. I would like to live inside those boundaries under proper social conditions. So, and I like the idea because it's giving a picture and the aim where we want to go, at least. Because sometimes I think there's a vision missing where we want to go. And I have here another slide. I hope this was lent from Professor Sigrid Stagel from a presentation she gave last year. And we have actually now this donut applied. So for example, for Bangladesh. So you see that, well, it's well inside. So the average person in Bangladesh is well inside our boundary, but really has fundamental losses in social boundaries or social needs. So there's a lot of to do in improve the social conditions there. Oh, sorry. I just have in the PowerPoint, it was really nice. But I think you can imagine what happens in the middle. Wait. We go here. I can add the figure. I guess the Wi-Fi is a problem now. No, No, I don't get it. I just have to say I do it with this menti at the moment the first time. So it's a bit slow. Okay, I just want to go to the slide. Please. Ha! No. Does not like the slide. One last try. Okay. No. Okay, but you can imagine, yeah, if you Bangladesh is, for example, one city country where we have the problems in the middle. Then there was an example of Albania, which is well below the planetary bound, but has also problems in the middle. Yeah, here, practically, has problems in the social area, and you might guess that on the right-hand side was Austria, which has no problems actually, or not so many problems in the social, in the middle, but a lot of problems outside. So, and I have to check the time, otherwise I don't want to make too long. But okay, wait. Yes. So actually, since I mentioned several times, I'm a physicist. I really like measurements, and I think you can't manage what you don't measure. So actually, it's really important just to get numbers in order to check where we are within these boundaries, and therefore are this carbon footprint, which many people know, but there are a few more which can be calculated, and also there are tables from Umweltbundesamt and many other sources where you can, for many products, you get, for example, these numbers. So we have, let's say, upper right, the carbon footprint, which is actually connected to the SDG 13 climate action. Yeah, this is well known, I think, but it's really important also how much water we use, water footprint, because one single T-shirt might be a lot of water, and also a lot of food is really wasted water. So there was last year there was a nice presentation of by Professor Dorigo, I think. He measured changes in the water on the surface, and there were a lot of problems from this extensive agriculture in using the water, and then there was something left. And so I will try to get the lecture for you. So that's really important as well. The material footprint is really, really important, because that's literally limited, because there's just one Earth. Yeah. So there's some material we might use. So we can discuss about, it should be more or less in a circular economy as well. So it should be walking around in the system. And the ecological footprint, which is also interestingly expressed in Earth. So this usually, if you have this Earth Extinction Day not Extinction Day, but expansion. So at least if you use all of Earth, it's actually in April, I think, at the moment. So for Austria at least, and in the world, I think in July. Somebody notice? I think it's, so actually we extinct all resources for 1 year in Austria already in April. And we use roughly in average 2.5 Earths, but we have just one. So, a little bit more facts, I'm sorry. I still like facts and numbers. Just really quick. So actually, what is the now in 2020 from Umweltbundesamt in Austria? What is actually the distribution of this CO2 emission we have? So roughly 10% goes to agriculture, 10% to buildings, mobility is roughly 30%, and industry and energy is together more or less 40%. So now it's really depends a little bit on the numbers you see. Sometimes the transport of the agriculture is counted to agriculture, so it might be vary a little bit, but the major parts is usually mobility, food, heating, and some other consumption, some other products like shoes and t-shirts and anything we need. And the worst part, or the not so good message, is actually that we didn't decrease the CO2 emission so far. Not very much since 2019. Yeah, you see, actually the number is really still 7 million tons. And actually, if we have this, this emission trading of the industries, which is not in the red part here. But anyway, it's not really that trend which really have to go up. Sorry, down. So just that you see where we are at the moment. And the question is, for me always, what can we do? And I see it in let's say in not three different points, but in three components. So therefore I made this kind of reels, they are really going into each other, and nothing is really going alone. So actually there's more or less some kind of individual, the people side, there's the political framework, which is giving the rules, and the companies which are acting inside of these rules. And I like really this kind of statements. First, you should avoid, then try to shift, then improve, and then compensate. So if you have CO2 emissions, try always first to avoid them because it's easiest. Just don't do it. It's in most cases it's easiest. Then maybe do something else if you can. So if you need a car, then just use electric car because it's not emits so much CO2. And if there's still some CO2 too much, then try to improve more. And in the end, try to compensate maybe with money. There are many different possibilities. We can talk after this. There's also some kind of good and bad compensation mechanisms we can really talk about after. So, and I would like to go now from, let's say, from individual to the, let's say, stepwise outside of this what you can do. First, okay, we can at least try to reduce our own consumption a little bit. So there was a nice study, also a talk on our YouTube channel from Dominik Wiedenhofer in 2020, in September 2020, about his study. This was a meta study, so they studied several different papers. I think, I don't know, 300 or more studies about how much CO2 you can save. And more or less, these are the first 10 points you might save CO2. So unfortunately, live car free is the number one. But at least we can also substitute with electric car. One less flight is also saving a lot of CO2. Renewable energy, so the typical one, I guess, everybody knows what we can do, at least on a personal level. But still, the same food, housing, mobility, and others, so consumption, still are the most important areas we can do something. And what I really like is, again, numbers. And there are several kind of this footprint calculators outside. So one of my colleagues has this ecological footprint at the web page of the Federal Ministry of Climate. Yes. Actually, it's more than roughly 10 years old, but still very valid. So at least the numbers, I asked him, and the numbers are not that bad. You can still use it to estimate how much Earths you will need. I still have 2, I guess. It's a little bit too large still. But at least we will see there are some conditions you cannot change at the moment, not by yourself. And this is the other important part and message I want to say. And for the students, I asked them maybe to have a look at this Ein guter Tag, a good day, because I like the concept, and it's a nice mobile cell phone app, and maybe you have done it already. So a good day has 100 points. It's also on the website. Means just, it's translate actually the, let's say, CO2 level you are allowed. It's roughly 2 tons of CO2 emission into 100 points, which is maybe a little bit more touchable, or at least understandable for our way of thinking with money and so on. So therefore, we have to get to 100 points. But it's really hard, I have to say. So actually, this 6.8 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, so CO2 emission and climate change effect per day are 100 points. It's really calculated from 1 year to a day back. So if you try now, it takes a long time. So either you did it before or you can really try it afterwards. So the app looks really interesting. So it's quite simple, I think. And one of the most important parts as well is if you start, it will ask you where you live. It's just a moment for the German-speaking area. But in the moment you are living in Austria, you have already 25 points every day. And this is actually the every infrastructure we are using, the cars, the hospitals, the fire department, all the stuff which is given and provided by the government is providing 1/4 of our personal footprint, actually. And this is the part where we really have actually alone no way to change it. And this is one important message I want to say. There's really two aspects. There's one, the political framework, which is practically given by this one, and our own perspective. And those have always working together. So actually, yeah, this was not mine, but the guy was also Martin, but I have roughly the same. And in the end, you see actually how it's developed. So he has, in this moment, a lot of mobility, less living, maybe a nice passive house. I don't know what this guy is doing, but he has no vacation. He should take vacation, I guess. And some food. So this is you see nice overview about what you have per day. And just really as a game, either you have done it and have the number, or you might estimate how much you have. Just give the number, maybe you remember afterwards and then check it by yourself. Maybe if you guess, if you would like to guess mit Menti Miete or not. Sorry. Okay. Someone with 100. I will be really surprised if you do the calculations. Maybe for the students, we can discuss in the Moodle afterwards as well. Yeah, so if you look on the website, there are some examples and easily people go with 400 or more. If they travel a lot, if they take one flight a year, you have seen car travel to Spain, one vacation to Spain is 1 ton of CO2. So actually, I'm afraid it's not that easy. But therefore, it's really nice to get the values and maybe try to reduce them. Thank you very much. And so actually, you can track it also over time, because you can change it every day if you like and if you need, and if there's some change. So you can see how it changed. It will suggest some challenges as well. So maybe you can, usually the people are living in a flat, they cannot change the heating system, but they can try something else, fly less, or maybe use the bicycle more. Bicycle is a really nice part if you have the distance to your workplace. And if you do some challenges, yeah, you do, for example, a new heating system, if you have your own apartment, then the app allows you also to take some deal for the political framework. For example, this kind of science-based target initiative. Yeah, and they will support, if there are not enough people who will support this deal, they will try to get it to the governmental persons and try to change something. So this is, I think it's a nice going back inside this framework. So actually, this app or any footprint calculator, whatever you use, helps you to make this personal decision. Sometimes they are conscious, sometimes they are really subconscious, because you might not realize that you do something, or will help here and actually will also try to help with these political decisions, which I really like to have this nice go-to in this app. So, and there's a nice feature as well, maybe we can do also with the students, because you can make groups and see what the group is doing. And you see also if the group is going back or going down with your emissions. So there's a group of Austria, for example. I think they started with really small because they just started this year again. Before last year they had a different app, but they started this year. And you might see, for example, students see how it goes over the semester, for example, or your family goes. You can ask your parents, just do it, and then you see maybe how much it is, or that they can also reduce. I think it's a nice gamification in this sense. And there's a project, so they do it also, let's say, in a larger scale. They did this project in Baden, where 20 families, I think, try to agree with the Paris agreements, therefore Paris-Baden. They started in average with 247 and ended with 150. At least they could reduce at least 100 points. They didn't reach its aim 100, but it was also just over a limited time. And in Austria, the average is 450. I forgot to tell. So it's, I would be really interested what your numbers are. Not that nobody's to blame. Yeah? It's a lot of the system, and we cannot do that much if really on our own. And let's say we have a look at the typical, let's say just have a short idea about typical values. So as I said before, there are this 4 or 5 areas: food, consuming goods, heating, electricity, and mobility. 450 is the average, 100 is the good part. And here are some examples what different products are in points. So there's a big difference between t-shirt and organic t-shirts. We can now discuss, is this really the big difference, and what is the references, but at least you get the idea what might be the better solution. You can also ask where the strawberries are coming from. And the bicycle will be also produced. If you have a bicycle which is really expensive and use it only once a year, then actually it also gives some points at least. But now there's some nice guessing as well, if you like, with Menti as well. So let's go and think about how much points you will have for 10 kilometers by a small car, by a SUV, or by a car with electric engine. And be aware that the scale is from 0 to 100. Yeah, it's actually making the average of all guesses, but you see, okay, everybody did it? Not too bad. So let's say 40, 60, and what was the last one? 19 in average, I think. Okay, before it does not go back, it gets, yeah, 40, 60, and 20. And in this calculation, yeah, it depends a little bit again what everything you take into account. That's a little bit the problem with the footprints. I would say it's not that precise as I'm used to in physics. So it depends a lot of how much you consider, which is the boundary you consider for the calculation. But in this example, the small car is more than half of the SUV, and the electric car has really a low footprint. Might be that now that it depends on where the electricity is coming from. If it's renewable electricity, then this might be 3. If it's not renewable energy electricity, then it might be more, I think. And the next guessing would be about mobility, but not. Does it work? Yes. So again, but now for the train and the bus and the bicycle. Okay, the bicycle is unfair because we have seen it before. Okay, I think this is a very well guess. Thank you. So actually, it's half of the guess, but at least the ratio was correct. So, and I was sitting yesterday on preparing the last slides here, and actually I was looking on the numbers, and there are a lot of different numbers. So it ranges from twice for the train, and it depends a little bit where the train is produced, and so. But actually, you get the idea really from the train is usually much better than the bus, and the bicycle is always good, even with rain. And you might consider even the impact on your health and actually on the health system, which is really costing less because many more people would go by bicycle. Actually, would also save a lot of money, but many people don't think so far, at least, not in the politics sometimes. And I have, I think, the last one. Yes, food. 1 organic egg, 1 kilo of apples, and 20 gram of ham. Okay, this might be a little bit unfair, but it's everything 2. the numbers were chosen so that's 2. But important is that you can eat a lot of apples for just 20 gram of ham. And first you take better the vegetarian choice, and then try also biological, because biological is sometimes, at least from the carbon, sometimes lower. It has sometimes a little more land use, you might notice. So organic agriculture has sometimes more land use than conventional, but I think it's worth the quality. And therefore, the last one, I spoiled already. Damn it. I want to ask if you guess how much points you will need for just the framework we are living in, but I guess you know already 25 points, which therefore we need also to apply some other needs instead of only doing ourselves. This we skip because you know. By the way, Germany has a little bit more, and Switzerland as well. And actually, just the credits, it's this initiative coming from this Kairos Wirkungsforschung und Entwicklungs GmbH in Bregenz. And I think it's a nice idea, really, to get at least idea that everything we are doing is related with carbon dioxide and with materials, and therefore you get a little bit more feeling what we are doing. And the next step, I would say, we can do, if we do our own individual level, we can also try to get outside, to be a multiplier of the ideas. We can try to tell others. I had nice reports from the students before in the lectures that they try to convince other people, they change their life. Really? Okay, they wrote it down, I don't know. But I would like really that many people get inspired by these talks, by nice presentation we have, but also inspire other people to do it. And there was this nice project, Pilotprojekt Kaisergasse in Linz, from Helvin. Helvin Prohaska, he has also this Verein Energiewende Linz. I'm working also with him. And I like the idea that we do more than just our individual points, but we try also to convince other people in this project. And the idea was here actually to do a photovoltaic installation on their own apartment, on their own apartment house, where it was just rented, but we have to convince all the other owners of the apartment, which is really a complicated task. So the project was actually led by Helvin Prohaska, Julia Wiesinger, and Martin Danner. And it's already, first part is already done, but there's already a second stage on it. So what we do about climate change if we change our own stuff a little bit and what we want to do more, because it's a really big challenge. So we can try to do it on their own house, for example, in this apartment, Kaisergasse 20 in Linz. Yeah, a really nice house, really nice flat roof. You can install a lot of photovoltaic and produce a lot of energy and should give a lot of money. So actually, I guess the people hope that this will really convince the people living there just to do it. So actually you can try to get ideas and present them to all the people in the apartment and the owners. You know already now it's even worse than the electricity price is going up really straight. So photovoltaic installations might be really one solution. We can produce a lot of electricity for our own apartments, but also in this kind of common renewable energy societies, which is also now promoted by the government. So the first thinking about was how much you can install. There was some kind of idea how much, so some companies were trying to put as many photovoltaic modules on the roof as possible. Sometimes they put also too much because the scale was not right. What would it cost? And this was then finally presented in a large concept, including also the electricity, some for the cars, some part of green on the roofs, on some other stuff. So not only the one system, but a kind of whole bunch of possibilities. Also, the roof has had no isolation, or still has no isolation, because I didn't do it at some point. So this was also included. And in the end, unfortunately, the owners of the house decided against it because it was too expensive, and they didn't see the need, and they didn't see the future that it will give money at the end. But at least they tried. And I think this is really a good idea where you can try. And the end, we also try with this now in a second stage to find more of this kind of apartments, more of kind of these people, which they want to do this as well. So we have really to have the question where our electricity coming in the future. We saw that many fossil fuels using the electricity, whereas this kind of charging infrastructure for e-mobility is also a big issue. I know a lot of people which might buy an electric car, but they cannot charge it in front of the house, which is really complicated. And this kind of erneuerbare Energiegemeinschaften, this common or this coming together of different houses with renewable energy, which is also now promoted in many aspects. This would be one idea. So there are many more. You can also just try to convince people to get into action. And let's say the last stage I want to impress today is practically be part of a movement which is just trying also to convince politicians or do this kind of work, going outside, make presentations, which I do actually now with Scientists for Future. So I like this kind of change agent. So also you can try to implement those ideas in your company. It's hard enough, I know, but there are always small steps to go. And therefore, I just want to present at the end a few slides about Scientists for Future. This is from the last climate strike last year, I think. And we try really to engage our fellow researchers and also students. So actually, I think always it's open for academics of all research fields, not only natural science, which Scientists for Future implies at some point, but also for academics to be students, which should be also have the same ideas and might also want to change their universities and the viewpoint of the universities at some point, because they all have also some problems with CO2 emission, definitely. So Scientists for Future was actually starting in 2019 with a large statement signed by 26,000 researchers all over Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and actually supported this Fridays for Future movement. I said already, all research fields, this is really important because I think we need all kind of researchers and all kind of expertise, not only in natural science, because climate science, we know already a lot about the systems, but how we implement it is more or less, I think, also a problem of social science. So therefore, we will need also psychology and social science and so on. So you can have click on the links for the statement, or there's also a publication in this paper. So actually a picture of our first lectures, which was before Corona, and the first and only lecture in 2020 we did in person, but was really nice. And our goals are practically, the first one would be more or less walk the talk in principle, get the universities and our own research more or less carbon neutral, or at least take the responsibilities and think about the materials and resources. Motivation of research on sustainability topics and sustainable research. There's already a lot done in this direction, but I think there are still not really a lot of courses going in this direction. We try, for example, to get a sustainability chemistry master, and this is really some kind of sometimes really problem to develop kind of the framework for the courses and this kind of master. Climate protection and sustainability in teaching. You know all that we could change the electricity to ecological. This is made from water, for example, which would be really easy. We tried networking. I do as well at the moment. Contributing to civil society with presentations. We go outside, we do this kind of children university giving course about greenhouse effects, like I did today. And the final goal would be also to consult decision makers, which is the hardest as well. So it's more or less also, I think it's becoming harder if you go down. And what we do in Upper Austria, or did before so far, we started in 2020. We have these social media accounts you might have known about. We try to spread scientific facts of our scientists, which have some interesting news to tell. And we have already researchers from Johannes Kepler University, the Catholic Private University, FH Upper Austria, and PH Upper Austria. And I think almost finally, just to give a small overview what we did so far. We did press conferences. We had a nice course with bubbles. Can you guess what is inside this box that the bubbles are levitating? CO2. Yes, it's carbon dioxide because it's heavier and it does not go out of the box, and the bubbles are levitating on it. It's a really nice experiment. Yeah, we did some press media collaboration. I guess you know the headline, or at least you understand what we meant. And this is really something we can do and go outside and have workshops and spread the word actually of all this kind of topics. So I'm more or less done. So the messages I would like to spread today is actually the problem is more complex. Yeah, it's not about just climate change, but also about the social aspects are really important. It's nicely covered in the Sustainable Development Goals and in this donut economy. But at least the problems or the solutions can cover several problems. We should always think together those kind of crises. I like to say that respect resources and materials, but you can't be perfect. Of course, just try. Yeah, nobody will be perfect, and there's usually discussion. You have to be 100% perfect before you can say anything to other people. I don't agree to this one. Everybody can try. Sustainable life is possible within social and planetary boundaries. I would like to live inside a donut. Sounds a little bit weird, maybe. And we need definitely to try to change the political framework. Still, there's a lot of improvement. We have now the CO2 tax, but there's still improvement as well. It's maybe too low. I can say there are some calculations. If you want to remove CO2, 1 ton of CO2 in the atmosphere, it's at the moment 1,000 euros. And this should be, or at least experts say 300 euros for 1 ton of CO2 would be a value which would change something. But still we can try and we will continue our work. And so far I have heard that many regulations in the European Union which are still to come point towards a good direction. So many more companies are now restricted to do this kind of ecological footprint, or there will be in the future, so that they will have to report not only with this sustainable report, which is nowadays common, but also if they claim to be green, they have to really give some numbers which prove this. And this is really good development, I think. So I would really like to say that we should seek and apply solutions together and not only alone. And with that, I have just 2 points for next steps. And then I think I'm almost in time, which I find really interesting and I would like to follow. And just to, let's say, put a word on is the circular economy, how this energy transition is working, and this well-being project, which is actually done by the Club of, or at least by my colleague, Dr. Friedrich Hinterberger, by the Club from Austrian Chapter. And those topics are really, I think, worth to work on. And I would like to end with a citation, because coming to this well-being, actually we need a re-articulation of human development for the 21st century to redirect purpose from growing GDP to securing the well-being of people and planet. Now is the time to focus on measures of well-being. Yeah, I don't like this GDP anymore, because it's also, one can say, if there's an ambulance going and there's some car crash, the GDP is growing. And we should go away from this kind of measure and measure more or less the well-being. However it is, but hopefully inside the donut. Thanks. Okay. So I